There was a time when a road trip wasn't just about reaching a destination, it was about the journey itself. Families loaded up their cars with coolers, maps, and endless optimism, ready to chase the horizon across highways and winding country roads. It wasn't just travel, it was a tradition, shaped by rituals and unspoken rules that everyone seemed to follow without ever writing them down. The rhythm of the tires, the smell of roadside diners, the glow of neon motels, each part of the trip became a memory of its own. Today, we are rolling back the years to rediscover 10 unwritten rules of vintage American road trips. 1. Pack the car like a puzzle. Before roomy minivans and SUVs, families made do with whatever space the family sedan or station wagon could spare. Suitcases were stacked, coolers wedged into corners, and blankets folded into the narrowest of gaps. It was a test of patience and geometry, finding just the right angle for every bag. Sometimes, luggage had to ride on the roof, strapped down tight with bungee cords or rattling inside a bulky carrier. The ritual of packing wasn't quick, it was almost a pre-trip ceremony. Everyone knew their role. Dad made the final calls, Mom double-checked the essentials, and the kids tried to sneak in one more toy. Today, with bigger cars and lighter travel habits, that careful packing dance has faded. But anyone who remembers it knows the trip truly began not on the road, but in the driveway. 2. Always stop for roadside curiosities. Nothing broke up the monotony of endless miles like the lure of roadside attractions. Wooden billboards promised the world's largest ball of twine, or mystery caverns just ahead. Kids pressed their noses to the glass, begging for a stop, while parents weighed time against curiosity. Sometimes the detours led to tacky souvenir shops, sometimes to wonders that still feel magical decades later. The unwritten rule was simple: if the sign said "don't miss it," you stopped, even if just for a peek. It was these little breaks that gave the trip character, turning a long drive into a patchwork of stories. Today, with highways designed for speed and rest areas replacing roadside oddities, fewer families pull over for the quirky or the strange. But in the golden age of road trips, the journey was dotted with delight. 3. Gas stations were pit stops, not just pumps. Stopping for gas used to mean more than filling the tank. Uniformed attendants hustled out to wash your windshield, check the oil, and maybe top off the tires, all with a smile and a wave. Inside, candy bars sat next to racks of road maps, and sometimes there was even a friendly cat curled up behind the counter. For kids, it was a chance to stretch their legs, grab a soda from the cooler, or collect another free map for the growing pile in the glove box. It was understood. Every stop was part of the adventure, not just a delay. These full-service stations were like miniature rest stops, where travelers could slow down and feel cared for. Self-service pumps slowly replaced the charm, and with them, a little piece of road trip magic disappeared. But the memory of windshield wipers squeaking under the hands of a cheerful attendant still lingers. 4. Bring a cooler and never let it go empty. A trusty cooler, often metal or heavy plastic, sat wedged on the floor or between the back seats. Packed with sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, bottles of soda, and maybe some hard-boiled eggs, it was the family's lifeline on long stretches of road. Whenever hunger struck, Mom would reach back, or a kid would fish around in the melting ice for a drink. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt resourceful and comforting. The rule was clear: keep the cooler stocked, and the road trip would never stall. Over time, fast food restaurants sprouted along highways, slowly stealing the cooler's spotlight. But those who remember know there was something special about a soggy sandwich or a slightly warm soda, eaten under a roadside tree while cars roared past. 5. The front seat belonged to the navigator. Before GPS and smartphones, the navigator was essential. Maps, often so large they covered a whole lap, were unfolded and folded again, their creases soft from use. The front passenger didn't just point out exits, they kept the trip flowing, warning of turns, spotting landmarks, and reading road signs aloud. Sometimes they doubled as DJ, storyteller, or referee between restless kids in the back. The unwritten rule was clear: that seat came with responsibility. Getting lost wasn't a failure, It was part of the adventure, but the navigator was trusted to keep the family heading roughly in the right direction. Today, with digital voices giving turn-by-turn commands, that human role has mostly vanished. Still, the memory of a parent or older sibling peering at a crumpled map under the dome light remains a defining image of vintage travel. 6. Roadside motels were half the fun. When the day's miles were done, neon signs promised rest. Motels boasted free TV, heated pool, or air conditioning, glowing like beacons for weary travelers. Rooms smelled faintly of cleaner and cigarette smoke, with patterned bedspreads and shag carpeting that told their own stories. Some even had coin-operated magic fingers beds that buzzed for a quarter, thrilling kids who'd never seen anything like it. The motel wasn't just a place to sleep, it was part of the journey. Pools became instant playgrounds, ice machines offered endless fun, and the novelty of sleeping away from home made it feel like vacation had truly begun. Today, chain hotels have polished away much of that quirky charm. But for many, the memory of neon humming outside the window remains one of the sweetest parts of road trips past. 7. Sing-alongs and car games were mandatory. Entertainment was homemade and it was shared. Parents led songs, patriotic tunes, campfire standards, or silly rhymes, while kids chimed in with gusto. Games like I Spy, 20 Questions, or spotting license plates from different states kept minds busy and spirits high. Laughter filled the car, and boredom was pushed aside by imagination. The unwritten rule was this: if the road was long, you made your own fun. The games weren't just distractions, they were memory makers, teaching patience, observation, and togetherness. As headphones and screens crept into cars, the sing-alongs grew quieter, but the echoes of those voices still ride the highways, remembered by anyone who once shouted, "Are we there yet?" from the backseat. 8. Never pass a diner without considering a stop. Roadside diners were irresistible, with their shining chrome exteriors, spinning stools, and waitresses who called everyone hun. The menus were simple but satisfying: pancakes, burgers, bottomless coffee, and of course, pie by the slice. Families might only stop for a quick meal, but the chatter of locals and the jukebox humming in the corner made it feel like part of the adventure. The unwritten rule was that a diner always deserved consideration. Even if you had a cooler full of sandwiches, a slice of cherry pie or a milkshake could win the vote. Over time, fast food chains crowded out many of these independent diners, but their memory shines like neon. To many travelers, nothing said road trip quite like a diner booth at midnight. 9. Postcards were proof you'd been there. Every gift shop and gas station carried racks of glossy postcards, sunsets, landmarks, and quirky roadside attractions printed in bold color. Families picked out favorites, scribbled notes in cramped handwriting, and mailed them off at the next stop. Friends back home would receive them days later, a small piece of the journey arriving in their mailbox. The rule was simple: a trip wasn't complete until you mailed a postcard. It wasn't just about the destination, it was proof of the journey itself, something tangible to hold. With phones and social media, postcards have nearly disappeared, but their charm is timeless. They were little souvenirs of connection, stamped and sent straight from the open road. 10. The journey mattered more than the destination. Above all, the greatest rule of vintage road trips was this: the ride itself was the reward. Families didn't just rush toward the Grand Canyon or Niagara Falls. They savored the moments in between. The laughter in the car, the small towns passed, the roadside stands selling peaches or pecan pies, all became part of the story. Trips weren't measured only in miles, but in memories. Today, efficiency often wins out, with travelers racing from point A to B. But the heart of those old road trips reminds us that sometimes the best part of traveling isn't where you're going, it's everything you see and feel along the way. From coolers and car games to neon-lit motels, these unwritten rules shaped the way Americans once traveled together. They speak to a slower, warmer kind of journey, one where the trip itself was the adventure. Though times have changed, the roads are still out there, waiting for anyone who wants to bring a little of that magic back. If you enjoyed this ride down memory lane, Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more nostalgic stories right here on Heritage USA. And tell us, which of these old road trip traditions do you miss the most?